1 year later, the Haiwan Memorial Foundation opened its doors. The ceremony took place in a massive hall on the upper levels of Velros Prime Station. Ambassadors from 30 different species attended. News crews from across the galaxy broadcast the event live. It was the largest charitable foundation ever created, with resources that could change millions of lives. Tejo stood backstage, adjusting his formal clothes nervously. He still felt uncomfortable in expensive outfits. He preferred his simple work clothes. But today was important. Today they would announce the foundation to the galaxy and explain its mission. Dawen stood beside him, now 9 years old and wearing a beautiful dress. She had grown so much in the past year. She was confident, articulate, and kind. She volunteered with her brother every week, helping younger children learn to read. She understood what the foundation meant because she remembered what it was like to be hungry and afraid. "Are you nervous?" she asked, taking his hand. "Very," Tejo admitted. "What if I mess up the speech?" "You will not mess up. Grandmother would be proud of you." "I am proud of you." Tejo squeezed her hand. Everything he did for her and for all the children like her who deserved better lives. Krivax appeared from the shadows, looking formal in traditional Thalorian ceremonial robes. "It is time," he said. His 4 eyes showed emotion that Thalorians rarely displayed in public. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I will ever be." They walked onto the stage together. The crowd quieted. Cameras focused on them. Tejo saw thousands of faces looking up at him expectantly. Some were wealthy and powerful. Others were refugees and workers who came to see what this foundation would mean for them. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Tejo," he said, his voice carried by speakers throughout the hall. 1 year ago, I stood in a food line in the lower levels of this station. I was poor, hungry, and scared. My only goal was to keep my little sister alive. I thought that was all my life would ever be. Survival. Day after day with no hope for anything better. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then I met Krivax. He saw a bracelet on my wrist and recognized it. That bracelet connected us across 40 years and changed everything. But this foundation is not about me. It is about the woman who owned that bracelet first. My grandmother, Haiwan. On screens throughout the hall, the photograph from Krivax's shrine appeared. Haiwan smiled at the camera, young and full of hope, wearing the bracelet that started everything. My grandmother taught me that wealth is not measured in credits. Tejo continued. She said real wealth is measured in the lives you touch and the good you do. She lived in poverty most of her life. She lost everything twice. But she never lost her kindness. She shared what little she had. She helped people who could not help her back. And she taught me to do the same. He touched the bracelet on his wrist. This bracelet represents a moment when 2 strangers chose kindness over convenience. Krivax saved my grandmother when he had no obligation to do so. She taught him that helping others has value beyond profit. That one moment changed both their lives. It created ripples that are still spreading today. The crowd listened in complete silence. Even the ambassadors who usually looked bored at such events were paying attention. The Haiwan Memorial Foundation exists to spread those ripples further, Tejo said. We do not just give money. We create opportunities. We provide job training, education, emergency relief, and community development. But most importantly, we treat everyone with dignity and respect, because my grandmother believed that how you help someone matters as much as the help you give. He gestured to Krivax, who stepped forward. The old Thalorian's voice was strong and clear. 42 years ago, a human woman taught me the most important lesson of my life. She showed me that the galaxy is better when we help each other, not for profit, not for recognition, but simply because it is right. I built my fortune on that principle. Now I dedicate that fortune to spreading her philosophy. Krivax walked to a display case that had been covered with cloth. He pulled the cloth away, revealing the bracelet. Not the one Tejo wore, but a perfect replica, glowing with the same soft light. This bracelet symbolizes what we stand for, Krivax said. Connection across species, kindness without expectation of reward, legacy that transcends death. Haiwan gave me more than my life. She gave me purpose. Now we give that gift to others. The ceremony continued with speeches from ambassadors and presentations about the Foundation's programs. But Tejo barely heard it. He stood beside Krivax looking at his grandmother's picture and felt her presence somehow. She had died in poverty, unknown to the galaxy. But her influence had shaped a billionaire's fortune and would now touch millions of lives. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Taeho spoke with diplomats, business leaders, and charity workers. Everyone wanted to know about the Foundation's plans. He explained their philosophy patiently over and over. They would not just solve immediate problems. They would teach people to solve their own problems. They would create systems that respected dignity while providing support. Late that night, after everyone left, Taeho returned to the hall alone. He stood before the display case containing the replica bracelet. His own bracelet hummed softly on his wrist, responding to the proximity of its twin. "I hope I am doing this right, grandmother," he whispered. "I hope you would be proud." She would be. Taeho turned to find Kryvak standing in the shadows. The old Thalorian walked slowly to join him, looking at the bracelet with ancient eyes. "You know," Kryvak said quietly, "when I made this bracelet 42 years ago, I was just practicing my craft. I never imagined it would become a symbol of something greater. I certainly never imagined it would lead to this." "Do you ever regret it?" Taeho asked. "You could have left my grandmother in that pod. You would still be wealthy, but you would have more. You give away so much. Regret?" Kryvax laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Never. Before I met Haywan, I was rich but empty. I had everything and nothing. She showed me what it meant to be truly wealthy. Not in credits, but in purpose. Every credit I give away brings me more joy than any credit I keep. That is her gift to me." They stood together in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds connected by one woman's legacy. "What happens now?" Taeho asked. "Now we work," Kryvak said. "We build the Foundation into something that will last for centuries. We help millions of people find opportunities and dignity. We spread your grandmother's philosophy across the galaxy. And when I am gone, you will continue the work. Then Daun will continue after you. Then her children. The legacy will never die. That is a heavy responsibility. Yes, but you are not alone. I will guide you for many more years. And you have already proven you understand what matters. You kept your grandmother's promise even when it hurt. You chose honor over comfort. You helped others when you had little to give. That is the spirit we need." Taeho looked down at his bracelet, watching the stones pulse with soft light. Each stone represented one of the 7 virtues of Kryvax's home world: compassion, courage, honesty, justice, wisdom, humility, and hope. His grandmother lived all these virtues without knowing what they were called. She just knew what was right and did it. "I will do my best," Taeho said. "For her, for Daun, for everyone who needs help." "That is all anyone can ask," Kryvak said. He placed one hand on Taeho's shoulder in a gesture of respect that Thalorians rarely gave to other species. "Your grandmother changed one life 42 years ago. You will change millions. That is how legacies work. One act of kindness creates ripples that never stop spreading." They left the hall together, walking into a future built on an old woman's wisdom and a young trader's courage. Behind them, the bracelet glowed softly in its case, a reminder that the smallest gestures could change the galaxy. Somewhere in the stars, Haywan's spirit smiled. Her grandson wore her bracelet and carried her values forward. Her friend honored her memory by helping millions, and her legacy would touch lives for generations to come. She had lived in poverty and died unknown, but in the end, she had become richer than any billionaire because her kindness would never be forgotten. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but humans like Haywan proved that compassion could survive anywhere, even in the darkest places. They showed that how you lived mattered more than how long you lived. They taught that one person, no matter how poor or powerless, could change the future simply by choosing to be kind. That was the human gift to the galaxy. That was why they mattered. That was why, despite being weak and short-lived, humans would always be remembered. Because when everyone else calculated profit and loss, humans calculated something different. They calculated hope. And hope, unlike money, never ran out as long as someone kept sharing it. Taeho touched his bracelet one last time before leaving. The stones pulsed warmly against his skin, carrying his grandmother's love across the years. He was ready to build something beautiful, ready to help millions, ready to prove that Haywan's life mattered and her lessons were worth learning. The legacy was just beginning. 6 months after the supply shipment incident, Taeho's life had changed completely. He managed logistics for 3 sectors now: overseeing hundreds of workers and coordinating supply chains across multiple systems. The work was challenging, but he loved it. Every day he helped move resources to places that needed them. Every decision he made affected real lives. Daeun was thriving. She was 8 years old now, top of her class in school. She loved mathematics and science. Her teachers said she had a gift. At night, Taeho helped her with homework at their dining table, watching her face light up when she solved difficult problems. These moments made everything worthwhile, but Taeho never forgot his roots. Every week he still returned to the lower levels. He organized supply distributions more efficiently now, using his knowledge to help more people with less waste. He taught other volunteers how to manage resources better, and he always wore his grandmother's bracelet, a reminder of where he came from and the values he lived by. Krivax watched all of this from a distance. He received weekly reports from Valora about Taeho's performance. Every report was positive. The young human worked hard, treated people with respect, and made smart decisions. But Krivax needed to know more. He needed to understand what drove Taeho. So he started meeting with him regularly, asking for advice on the company's charitable programs. These conversations happened in Krivax's private office, usually late in the evening after everyone else went home. They talked about difficult questions. How do you help people without making them dependent on charity? How do you respect dignity while providing aid? How do you decide who gets help when resources are limited? Taeho's answers always came back to his grandmother's teachings. She said charity should open doors, not build cages, he explained one evening. Give people tools, not handouts. Teach them skills. Create opportunities. Help them help themselves. That way they keep their pride. But some people cannot help themselves, Krivax pointed out. The sick, the elderly, the disabled. They need direct support. Then give it freely and with respect, Taeho said. My grandmother was sick at the end. She needed help. The people who helped her never made her feel weak or worthless. They treated her like she mattered. That is the difference between good charity and bad charity. Good charity recognizes human dignity. These conversations made Krivax certain. Taeho was the one. He had the mind, the heart, and the principles needed for what Krivax planned. But there was one more test. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Krivax called Taeho to his office. But this time the office was different. One wall had been covered by a curtain. Krivax stood before it, his 4 eyes filled with emotion that Thalorians usually hid. I want to show you something, Krivax said. Something I have never shown anyone except my closest advisors. But first you must understand why I am showing you. All right, Taeho said, confused but curious. Krivax pulled a cord. The curtain fell away, revealing a small shrine built into the wall. At its center was a photograph of a young woman. She wore simple clothes and a bright smile. On her wrist was the same bracelet Taeho wore now. That is your grandmother, Krivax said softly. I took that picture 42 years ago, just before we parted. I have kept it all this time. Taeho stepped closer, staring at the image. He had never seen his grandmother young. By the time he was born, she was old and tired. But in this picture, she looked full of life and hope. I built this shrine 10 years ago, Krivax continued. When I finally accepted, she was probably dead. I wanted a place to remember her, to honor what she taught me. What did she teach you? Taeho asked quietly. Krivax sat down heavily. For once, he looked old and tired. Everything that matters. Before I met your grandmother, I was a typical Thalorian. I cared only about profit. I followed the rules because breaking them was inefficient. I helped no one unless it benefited me. That was normal for my species. Expected even. He paused, collecting his thoughts. Then I found your grandmother floating in space, dying in an escape pod. By Thalorian law, I had no obligation to help. Saving her would cost me time, resources, and possibly my life if we ran out of supplies. The logical choice was to leave her. But you did not leave her, Taeho said. No, because when I opened that pod and saw her face, something inside me broke. Or maybe something woke up. I could not leave her. It felt wrong in a way I had never felt before. So I saved her. I shared my food and water. I took her to safety. And when we arrived, she tried to pay me with credits she could not afford to lose. Krivax's voice grew soft with memory. I refused her payment. She asked why I helped her. I said it was the right thing to do. But the truth was, I did not fully understand why myself. Not then. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "You gave me more than my life. You gave me hope that goodness still exists. He stood and walked to the shrine, touching the frame gently. That moment changed everything. I started questioning all my beliefs about how the galaxy worked. If helping someone felt that good, why did Thalorians teach that it was weakness? If kindness made such a difference, why did we avoid it? I began studying other cultures, other philosophies, and I started giving away portions of my profits to help people. My family thought I had gone mad, he continued. My business partners criticized me, but I did not care. Your grandmother showed me that there was more to life than accumulation of wealth. She showed me that how you treat others defines who you are. And over the decades, as my fortune grew, I gave more and more away. Now I donate half of everything I earn. Tejo listened in silence, beginning to understand. When the war came, I tried desperately to find her, Krivak said. I spent millions searching databases, tracking refugees, following any lead. But there were billions of casualties. So many records lost. Eventually, I had to accept that she was gone. It nearly destroyed me. The one person who changed my life, and I never got to thank her properly. He turned to face Tejo directly. Then 6 months ago, I saw you in that food line wearing her bracelet. At first, I could not believe it. But when you told me you were her grandson, everything made sense. She survived. She had a family. She passed on her values to the next generation. Her legacy lived on. Why are you telling me this? Tejo asked. Because I need your help. Krivax walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder. I am 70 years old. For my species, that means I have many decades left. But I am tired, Tejo. I have built an empire, earned more money than I can spend, and helped millions of people. But I want to do something bigger, something that will last long after I am gone. He handed the folder to Tejo. I want to create a foundation. Not just a charity that gives away money, but an organization that changes how the galaxy thinks about helping others. I want to spread your grandmother's philosophy. Dignity with aid, opportunity with support, respect with assistance. But I cannot do this alone. I need someone who truly understands these principles, someone who has lived them. Tejo opened the folder and saw documents outlining a massive charitable foundation. The proposed budget was staggering. Billions of credits dedicated to education, job training, emergency relief, and community development across dozens of worlds. I need someone to run this, Krivax said. Someone who will make decisions based on conscience, not profit. Someone who will remember that behind every statistic is a real person with dignity and dreams. Someone who learned these lessons from Haiwan herself. Tejo looked up slowly, realization dawning. You want me to run this? Yes, but I am 26 years old. I barely finished basic education. I have been working for you for only 6 months. How can I manage something this huge? Your grandmother influenced the future of a billion-credit fortune with nothing but her kindness and principles, Krivak said. You changed this company's policies with one act of courage. You already understand what matters. The rest you can learn, and I will be here to guide you for many years yet. Tejo felt overwhelmed. This was too big, too much responsibility. But then he thought about his grandmother, living in poverty but changing lives with her kindness. He thought about all the refugees he met each week, people who needed more than handouts. They needed hope. They needed someone who understood their struggles. If I do this, he said slowly, we do it right. No half measures. No compromises. We help people the way my grandmother would have wanted. That is exactly what I am counting on, Krivak said with a smile. Welcome to the next chapter of your grandmother's legacy. 3 months passed. Tejo worked in the logistics division of Krivax's company, managing supply shipments and coordinating delivery schedules across 3 sectors. The job was hard. He worked with people from a dozen different species, each with their own way of doing things. He made mistakes at first, but he learned quickly. His new apartment was small but clean. 2 rooms instead of 1 cramped pod. Tayun had her own bed for the first time in years. She attended a proper school now, not the overcrowded charity classes in the lower levels. She came home each day talking about things she learned, her eyes bright with excitement. Tejo still wore the bracelet every day. He never forgot where he came from. Every week on his 1 day off, he went back to the lower levels. He volunteered at the same shelter where he once stood in line for food. He helped distribute meals, organized supplies, and talked with the refugees who reminded him of himself just months ago. Valora, a female Thalorian who managed the logistics division, noticed everything. She was tall and sharp, with silver skin and eyes that missed nothing. Krivax had asked her to watch Tejo and report back. At first she thought it was a waste of time. Another charity case given a job he could not handle. But she was wrong. Tejo worked harder than anyone else in the division. He arrived early and stayed late. When other workers struggled with their tasks, he helped them. When systems broke down, he found solutions. He treated the cleaning staff with the same respect he showed managers. And every week, without fail, he disappeared for a full day to volunteer in the lower levels. He is unusual, Valora told Krivax in their weekly meeting. Most people in his position would try to forget their past. They would embrace their new status and leave the poor behind. But he goes back. Every week. He could rest, but he chooses to serve. That is because he remembers his grandmother's teachings, Krivax said. He sat in his office looking at an old photograph. It showed a young human woman with a kind smile, wearing a bracelet that caught the light. He had taken it 40 years ago before they parted. He kept it all this time. You care about him, Valora observed. It was not a question. I care about what he represents. His grandmother changed my life. She showed me that kindness had value beyond profit. If her grandson has the same spirit, then perhaps he can help me with something important. What? I'm getting old, Valora. By Thalorian standards, I have perhaps 60 or 70 years left. That sounds like a long time, but it is not. I have been thinking about my legacy. I want to create something that will last after I am gone. A foundation that truly helps people, not just gives them money, but I need someone to run it. Someone who understands poverty and dignity. Someone who will make the hard choices for the right reasons. Valora understood. You are testing him. You want to see if he is that person? Yes. But I need to know if he will make the right choice when it matters most. When rules say one thing but conscience says another, that is the real test. The test came 2 weeks later. A transport ship crashed just outside the station. It was carrying refugees from a destroyed colony, heading to a new settlement. The crash killed 30 people, but over 100 survived. They had no food, no water, and no medical supplies. The station authorities were overwhelmed. They said it would take 3 days to organize proper relief. 3 days meant more deaths. The survivors included children, elderly, and injured people who could not wait that long. Tejo was working late in the logistics center when the news came through. He pulled up the supply schedules on his computer. There was a shipment leaving in 2 hours for a wealthy client on the station's upper levels. Luxury foods, medical supplies, water purification tablets. Everything the refugees needed. He knew what he should do. File a request with the board. Wait for approval. Follow proper procedures. But proper procedures took time. People would die while he waited for permission. Tejo thought about his grandmother. She had been a refugee twice. She survived because people helped her when they did not have to. He thought about Da-un, how she almost died once when he could not afford medicine. A stranger gave him credits without asking for anything back. That was the only reason his sister lived. He made his decision. Using his access codes, Tejo rerouted the supply shipment. He changed the delivery destination from the upper levels to the crash site. He forged authorization signatures, making it look like the order came from higher up. Then he personally went to the loading bay and helped load the supplies onto an emergency shuttle. The refugees got food, water, and medical care that night. 12 people who would have died survived. But by morning, the wealthy client discovered their shipment was missing. They were furious. They threatened legal action. The company could lose millions of credits. Valora found Tejo in his office, calmly writing a report of what he had done. She stared at him in disbelief. Do you understand what you have done? She demanded. You committed theft. You forged authorization codes. That is corporate fraud. You will be fired, possibly arrested. And you cost this company a fortune. Tejo looked up at her with calm eyes. People were dying. I had the ability to help them. I chose to help. You broke the rules. Then the rules were wrong. He stood up and handed her the report. Everything is documented here. I take full responsibility. Fire me if you want. Arrest me if you must. But those people are alive. I would make the same choice again. Valora took the report with shaking hands. She did not know if she was angry or impressed. Krivax will decide what happens to you. Come with me. They walked to Krivax's office in silence. Word had already spread through the company about what happened. Some workers whispered that Tejo was a thief. Others said he was a hero. The board members were demanding his immediate termination. Kryvak sat behind his desk reading the report. Taeho stood before him straight-backed and unafraid. Dayun was in school. She did not know her brother might go to prison. That was good. She did not need to worry. You understand the consequences of your actions? Kryvak asked without looking up. Yes, sir. You cost this company approximately 4 million credits in lost business and legal fees. Yes, sir. You violated company policy, forged authorization codes, and committed fraud. Yes, sir. Finally, Kryvak looked up. His 4 eyes were unreadable. Why? Because it was the right thing to do, Taeho said simply. My grandmother taught me that some things matter more than rules. People were dying. I could save them. So I did. Kryvak was quiet for a long time. Memories flooded through him. 40 years ago, he broke Thalorian trade law to save a human woman. He risked his own future because leaving her to die felt wrong. His family criticized him. His guild fined him. But that decision changed everything. It taught him that honor sometimes required breaking rules. Now Haewon's grandson stood before him, having made the same choice. The same impossible, illogical, magnificent choice that made humans so special. You are not fired, Kryvak said. The room went silent. Valora stared at him. Taeho's expression did not change, but something in his shoulders relaxed slightly. In fact, Kryvak continued, I am making your actions official company policy. From now on, authorized logistics personnel can deploy emergency supplies in crisis situations without waiting for board approval. We will create a fund to cover such decisions, and we will compensate the client for their loss. Sir? Valora looked confused, but he broke the law. He followed a higher law, Kryvak said. The law of conscience. The law that says we help those who need help, even when it costs us. That is the law his grandmother taught him. It is the law she taught me, and it is the law this company will follow from now on. He stood and walked around the desk to face Taeho directly. Your grandmother would be proud of you. You honored her memory today, not by following rules, but by following her example. That takes courage. Taeho felt something tight in his chest loosen. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet. You are being promoted. Regional Logistics Manager. Your salary doubles, but your responsibilities triple, and I will be watching you closely. This is not a reward. This is a challenge. Show me that you can lead others the way your grandmother would have wanted. I will do my best. I know you will. Kryvak smiled, something Thalorians rarely did, because you are Haewon's grandson, and she never did anything halfway either. The office was bigger than Taeho's entire living pod. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the stars beyond the station. Soft chairs, real wood furniture, and the kind of cleanliness that only came with money filled the space. Taeho sat on the edge of his seat, holding Daun on his lap. The little girl stared at everything with wide eyes. She had never seen a place like this. Kryvak sat across from them behind a massive desk. He had been quiet for several minutes, just looking at the bracelet on Taeho's wrist. His 4 eyes seemed distant, lost in memories. Finally he spoke. Tell me about your grandmother, he said. Tell me everything. Taeho shifted uncomfortably. Why, who are you, really? And how did you know her? I will explain, Kryvak said. But first I need to know, please, it is important. Something in the alien's voice made Taeho relax slightly. This was not the voice of someone trying to cheat him. This was the voice of someone who had lost something precious and just found a small piece of it again. My grandmother's name was Haewon. Taeho began slowly. She was born on Earth in a place called Korea. When she was young, she joined a colony ship heading to New Seoul, a human settlement 3 systems away. But the ship was attacked. She survived in an escape pod. An alien trader found her and took her to safety. She never told us his name. She said he refused payment and gave her this bracelet as a gift. Kryvak made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. It was hard to tell with Thalorians. She made it to New Seoul eventually. Taeho continued. She married my grandfather there. They had 1 daughter, my mother. Life was hard but good. Then the war came. His voice got quieter. The Vryn destroyed everything. Most people died. My grandmother survived again. My grandfather did not. She escaped with my mother to this station. They lived in the lower levels. She never had much, but she shared what she had. People remember her. They say she was the kindest person they ever knew. She was, Krivax whispered. She truly was. Teho looked at him with confusion. You really knew her? I was the traitor who found her, Krivax said. His voice was heavy with emotion that he could not hide. I was young and stupid and following Thalorian law, which said I had no obligation to help refugees. But when I saw her, so frightened and alone, I could not leave her. She changed everything for me that day. She did not know it, but she saved my life as much as I saved hers. Teho stared at him. You are him? The traitor from the story? I am, but that was 40 years ago. You look young. Thalorians live much longer than humans. 40 years is not so long for me. Krivax leaned forward. What else did she tell you about me? Not much, Teho admitted. She said you were kind when you did not have to be. She said you taught her that the galaxy had good people in it. Even after she lost everything, she made me promise to live the same way, to help others when I could, to expect nothing back, to keep my word even when it hurt. And have you kept that promise? Teho looked down at his sister. I try. It is hard sometimes. We have so little. But I volunteer at the shelter when I can. I share food with people who have less. And I never sold the bracelet even though we were starving. She made me promise to keep it. She said it was worth more than money. Krivax felt his hearts clench. That was so like Haiwan. Even in death, she was teaching the next generation her values. When did she die? 10 years ago. She got sick. We had no money for real doctors. She died in a charity hospital. Teho's voice was flat, stating facts. My mother died 5 years later in a factory accident. My father died with her. I was 20 years old. Dayun was one. We have been alone since then. What do you do for work? I work in recycling plant 7. I sort trash. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I also work 2 other jobs. One in a food processing plant, one cleaning. I make enough to feed us and pay for our pod. I am saving for Dayun's education. She is smart. She deserves better than this. Krivax was silent for a long time. He studied this young human before him. Thin, exhausted, wearing clothes that should have been thrown away years ago. But his eyes were clear. He sat straight despite his tiredness, and he wore a bracelet worth billions of credits without knowing its true value, because his grandmother asked him to keep it. That bracelet, Krivax said finally, is worth approximately 3 billion credits, maybe more at auction. Teho went very still. What? The star silver alone is priceless. The craftsmanship is mine and my work is highly valued, but the stones are what make it truly unique. I infused them with bioenergy keyed to your grandmother's genetics. The fact that you can wear it means you share her DNA. It bonded to you when she gave it to you, transferring the coding. There are only 3 of these bracelets in existence. I made them as a young artist. The other 2 are in museums. Teho looked at his wrist like it had turned into a snake. 3 billion? You could sell it, Krivax said quietly. You and your sister would never work again. You could live in the upper levels. Send Dayun to the best schools. Have everything you ever wanted. Teho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, my grandmother told me never to sell it. I gave her my word. Even though you are starving, even though your sister suffers, we are not starving. We have enough. It is not comfortable, but we survive. Teho met Krivax's eyes. My grandmother said some things cannot be bought or sold. She said this bracelet represents honor. If I sell it, I lose more than money can buy. I lose myself. Krivax felt something break inside him. 40 years ago, a young woman refused his money because she said basic decency should not have a price. Now her grandson refused billions for the same reason. Humans were impossible. They were illogical. They chose suffering over compromise. And that was why they were magnificent. Your grandmother was the best person I ever met, Krivax said, his voice thick. She showed me what it meant to be more than a merchant. Because of her, I built my fortune on principles, not just profit. Because of her, I give away half of everything I earn to help people like you. And I spent years trying to find her after the war. I wanted to thank her. I wanted to tell her what she meant to me. But I found nothing. I thought she was dead. She lived a good life, Teho said quietly. She died poor but happy. She told me once that wealth was not measured in credits. It was measured in the lives you touched and the good you did. She said she was the richest woman in the galaxy because she had family who loved her and friends who remembered her kindness. She was right. Krivax stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Teho, I want to help you. Not because I pity you, but because I owe your grandmother a debt I can never repay. Let me honor her memory by helping her family. I do not want charity, Tejo said firmly. It is not charity. It is a job. A real job with real expectations. You will work hard. You will earn everything you receive. But I will make sure you and Doan have what you need. Your grandmother gave me a future when I was nobody. Let me give her grandson the same chance. Tejo looked at his sister. Doan had fallen asleep in his arms, tired from the long day. He thought about her future. About the school she could not attend. About the hunger he saw in her eyes some nights when he could not provide enough food. About his grandmother's teachings. If I do this, he said slowly, I work for everything. No special treatment. No easy path because of who my grandmother was. If I fail on my own. Agreed, Krivak said. But Daun's education and your housing are not negotiable. A child should not pay for her brother's pride. Tejo wanted to argue, but he looked at his sleeping sister and knew he could not let his pride hurt her. All right, he said quietly. When do I start? Krivax walked through the lower market district of Velros Prime Trading Station with slow, careful steps. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd of poor beings waiting in long lines for food. His security team followed close behind, their weapons ready but hidden. This was not a place where wealthy people usually came. The air smelled of unwashed bodies, desperation, and the cheap synthetic food being distributed to refugees. He was a Thalorian, tall and elegant with blue-gray skin that shimmered slightly under the station's artificial lights. His species lived for hundreds of years and were known across the galaxy as the best merchants and business people. Krivax himself was worth billions of credits. He owned trading companies, transport fleets, and property on 17 different worlds. But 40 years ago he had been nobody, just a young trader trying to survive. Today he was inspecting one of his company's charity centers. He did this once every few years, making sure his money was actually helping people and not disappearing into corrupt hands. He hated these visits. They reminded him of things he tried to forget. They reminded him of her. His eyes moved over the crowd without really seeing anyone. Humans, Vryn, Keltorians, and dozens of other species all pressed together, waiting for their turn to receive a small package of food that would keep them alive for another week. Children cried. Adults stood with empty faces, their dignity worn away by years of poverty. Then Krivax saw it. He stopped walking so suddenly that one of his guards bumped into him. His 4 eyes locked onto a young human man standing in the middle of the crowd, maybe 50 meters away. The man was thin, his clothes patched and faded. He held a small child in his arms, a girl no older than 6. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the bracelet on the man's wrist. Krivax felt his double hearts skip a beat. It could not be. It was impossible. But his eyes did not lie, and Thalorians had excellent vision. The bracelet was made of star silver, a rare metal from his homeworld that caught light in a very specific way. 7 stones were set into the metal, each one glowing with a soft inner light. He had made that bracelet himself, 4 decades ago. He had spent months crafting it, pouring his own bioenergy into the stones so they would bond with the wearer's genetic signature. He had given it to a human woman named Haiwan. The memory hit him like a physical blow. He had been 28 years old by Thalorian standards, barely an adult. His small cargo ship had broken down in empty space between systems. His supplies were running low. Then he had picked up a distress signal from an escape pod. Inside was a human woman, alone and terrified. Her colony ship had been attacked by pirates. She was the only survivor. He should have left her. By Thalorian law, he was not required to help refugees. His own supplies were limited. Saving her might mean his own death. But when he opened the pod and saw her face, something inside him changed. She had looked at him with such hope, such trust, even though he was an alien and she had just watched her entire family die. So he saved her. He shared his food and water. He delayed his own journey to take her to the nearest station. And when they arrived, she had tried to pay him with the few credits she had left. He refused. She had cried and asked why he helped her. He told her the truth. Because it was the right thing to do. Before they parted, she had given him a small carved stone, something her daughter had made. It was worthless, but he kept it. And he gave her the bracelet, something he had been making for practice. Wear this, he said, so you remember that kindness exists in the galaxy. That was 42 years ago. He never saw her again. When the human Vryn War destroyed Earth's colonies 5 years later, he searched for her, He spent millions of credits trying to find her, but there was no record. He assumed she died in the war like billions of others. The bracelet should have died with her. It was coded to her DNA. No one else could wear it without breaking the bond, which would shatter the stones. Yet here it was, intact, glowing, on the wrist of a young human man who had not even been born when Krivax gave it away. Krivax moved forward, pushing through the crowd. His guards tried to stop him, but he waved them off. He needed to see the bracelet up close. He needed to know if he was going insane or if this was real. The young man noticed him approaching. His eyes went wide. Of course they did. A Thalorian billionaire in expensive clothes did not usually walk up to refugees. The man pulled his little sister closer, protective. His face showed fear but also defiance. He would fight to protect the child if needed. That bracelet, Krivax said in Galactic Common, the language everyone in space learned. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Where did you get it? The young man's hand moved to cover the bracelet instinctively. It is mine, he said. His voice was quiet but firm. I did not steal it. I did not say you stole it. Krivax stepped closer. He could see the stones more clearly now. They pulsed with light in a rhythm he recognized. The bracelet was real, but that is a very rare piece. Very expensive, worth more than this entire station. How does a refugee come to have it? The young man's jaw tightened. It belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me before she died. Krivax felt the world spin around him. Your grandmother, he repeated slowly. What was her name? The young man hesitated. Clearly he thought this was some kind of trick or scam. Finally he said, Haywan. Her name was Haywan. The noise of the crowd faded away. Krivax heard nothing but his own heart's beating. Haywan, she had lived. She had survived the war. She had family, and now her grandson stood before him, wearing a bracelet that represented the moment Krivax learned what it meant to be more than just a merchant. Come with me, Krivax said. It was not a request. We need to talk. Bring your sister. You are not in trouble. I promise you that. But we need to talk about that bracelet and the woman who owned it. The young man looked uncertain. The little girl in his arms whispered something in his ear. Finally he nodded. My name is Teho, he said. This is my sister Daun. If this is a trick, no trick, Krivax interrupted. His voice was softer now. I made that bracelet 42 years ago. I gave it to a human woman who saved my life, though she never knew it. If you are her grandson, then you and I have much to discuss. Teho stared at him, confusion and disbelief mixing on his face. But he followed as Krivax turned and walked toward the station's upper levels. The guards cleared a path through the crowd, and with each step, Krivax felt like he was walking through time itself, back to a moment when a frightened young trader learned that some things mattered more than profit. Haywan had lived, and somehow, impossibly, her legacy had found its way back to him.